The 62 conflict with China is a very complex scenario. It's not something which has a particular thing or two particular things which led to it, but a series of events which were spread over almost a decade plus. In the immediate aftermath of independence, India was plunged into a war with Pakistan over Jammu and Kashmir, which got resolved or not resolved depending on which way you look at it, where the Pakistanis were with Pakistan occupied Kashmir and we had our area. But around that time, the things were happening in China as well. Now we must understand at this stage, in 1947, when India became independent and the British moved out of the picture, China was not on the equation as far as we are concerned. They were not our adversaries, they were not our neighbors, they were not anything. I mean, they were a country which was far removed from what was happening in India. But after 49, when the Jammu and Kashmir situation started to settle down, that's the time when the communists had overthrown the Kuomintang government in China. And the immediate aftermath of that was that once Mao Zedong came to power, he immediately annexed Xinjiang. Now, when he annexed Xinjiang, Jammu and Kashmir had a new neighbor, which was Communist China, Red China. And that was a test piece, because what Mao did, he wanted to also see how the world will react if they move into Xinjiang. Nobody moved, because after World War II, everybody was too exhausted of 5 or 6 years of very heavy fighting. So the next thing the Chinese did was they annexed Tibet. You can call it, they gave it various names, but the fact is they basically invaded Tibet and they grabbed it. Now, the moment that happened, not only Jammu and Kashmir, but your entire northern border, which extended from Ladakh to Nifa, was now facing China. Sardar Patel, who was the Home Minister at that time, put out a very good appreciation of the situation. He wrote to Nehru and he said, look, Communist China by its very nature is expansionist, and every treaty that the Tibetans have had with the British or with British India will now go out of the window. Therefore, we've got to be very, very proactive, because India was the only country which had a mission in Lhasa at that time. We had 2 infantry battalions which was stationed in Tibet. But unfortunately, and this is one of those big ifs in history, Sardar Patel passed away 37 days after writing this letter. However, there was an aftermath of this letter. The direct result of this was that there were 2 committees set up. One was the Himmat Singh Committee, which was primarily tasked with looking at the role of the Assam Rifles, which was a paramilitary force which was looking after Nifa. Now, Nifa was at that point of time under the Ministry of External Affairs, and the head of that was Prime Minister Nehru, though it also reported to the governor of Assam. It had a kind of a dual control kind of a situation, but the army was not in the picture. In fact, the Eastern Army commander at that time used to be in Lucknow, not in Calcutta, and he was not allowed to go into Nifa, because the repercussions of that would be considered to be different. Now, that was as far as the Himmat Singh Committee report was concerned, and the Himmat Singh Committee then also worked out, you see, the Nifa area at that time was also known as the unadministered area, and the British had just begun to start probing into this area. So it was also decided that we will set up Assam Rifle posts all along the McMahon line, which had been arrived at in 1913 in Simla, in 1914 in Simla, after a very thorough survey had been done by Captain Morshid and Bailey in 1913. Based on that, they had formed up the line of demarcation between Tibet and British India. The Chinese had abstained from that, but they had abstained for different reasons. It had nothing to do with the McMahon line. They had abstained because they did not agree with the inner and outer boundaries of Tibet. 2 committees were basically set up as a result of Sardar Patel's letter. The first one was the Himmat Singh Committee report, which looked at the functioning of the Assam Rifles. The Assam Rifles at that time was entirely, as I said earlier, a part of the External Affairs, and the entire restructuring of the force was done, including occupying the ridge line along the McMahon line, which meant setting up something like 16 or 17 high altitude posts, which were basically there to just keep an eye on what the Tibetans were doing. which of course changed because now you suddenly had the Chinese which had replaced the Tibetans. The second committee was the Kulwant Singh committee, which was set up. Kulwant Singh was a general in the, he was a very senior general, and he had played a very major role in the 47-48 operations. The Kulwant Singh committee looked at the overall scenario vis-a-vis China. And in 1953, it submitted its report. And it very categorically says in that report that in 9 years or within 9 years, we will fight China. We will have a border clash with China, and this is what is going to happen. Now, this should have actually sent the alarm bells ringing. But 53, when the Kulwant Singh report came out, was the build-up to the 54 Panchsheel Treaty with China. Now, Prime Minister Nehru at that time had a completely different approach. He was trying to prop up communist China in a big way, and he, despite being warned by the army, despite being warned by various people, he preferred to have his own policy, which was that of appeasement of China. And this whole Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai, the Panchsheel Treaty, was signed with much fanfare because Nehru was also trying to project himself as the leader of the Third World movement, and his entire focus was on peace and, you know, despite what had happened in J&K in the immediate aftermath, and the non-violence was a fact which had got associated with the Congress party. So there was this falling between various stools kind of a attitude. The moment the Panchsheel agreement was signed, the problem actually began, because the Chinese started getting into cartographic aggression. They started claiming that their claim lines were different from what had been decided with Tibet. They refused to recognize certain things, but they were very careful and they were very clever about it. They did not create any trouble in Ladakh. They did not create any trouble in Nifa. They created trouble at a place called Barahoti, which is in the Satluj basin, in the Kumaon and this area, you know. Now, the mistake that we made as a country was that the Prime Minister, because he was committed to peace and everything, he started to cover up for the Chinese. And despite a series of events over the next 3, 4, 5 years, the government of India doggedly told the people of this country that there was no problem with China. Everything was hunky-dory. Despite a lot of provocation, despite a lot of things going wrong. Now, you also must understand that the Aksai Chin Highway was already being constructed by China because to link Tibet with Xinjiang, they had to cut across Aksai Chin, which belonged to us. On the maps, it belonged to us. It wasn't occupied. But the Chinese quietly moved in there and they started building this highway. It wasn't that we weren't warned about it, because the military attaché did say it's happening. And then when the Chinese press announced it with great fanfare that they've constructed this in 1957, even then it was hidden from Parliament. Now, this was the scenario under which we were, you know, toward the end of the 1950s. And then we come to 1959, when things started going completely haywire, because there was this place called Longju in the Subansiri basin, where the Chinese finally came again. This constant cat and mouse game was going on, push here, incursion here, incursion there. We would not admit it. We would not even tell our Parliament that this was happening, let alone the rest of the people. But notes would be exchanged between the Indian diplomatic corps and the Chinese corps. You see, but apart from that, there was nothing. There was just no admission that yes, there is something wrong, until Longju happened. And in Longju, some people got killed because there was an exchange of fire, and 9 or 6 or 10 guys were killed. Now, when this happened, this made big news, and PTI got hold of it, and they splashed it the next day. The moment Longju became a national thing, that there is a problem with China on the border, the whole balloon had gone up, and Prime Minister Nehru didn't know where to look. And just before Longju, there had been another incident in Nifa at Khenzemane, where the Chinese troops had arrived on the Namgyangchu River and pushed the Assam Rifles picket back to a kilometer and a half to a bridge called Durkuk Samba. The Assam Rifles had pushed these guys back. So, you know, all this nonsense had gone, but nobody had been killed. But at Longju, once people got killed, it came out in the papers. This led to the Prime Minister being cornered, and he had to then go to Parliament and make a statement that, okay, yes, all this has been going on, all this Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai stuff is, you know, it is propaganda. This is not the reality on the ground. And he went to Parliament and he said yes, Longju this, and he gave a long-winded explanation about Longju. He talked about Khenzemane, he talked about the Aksai Chain Highway. Now what happened was, he was expecting the entire Parliament to go for his throat, that, what, you've been lying to us. But they were stunned into silence because nobody knew that these places even existed, It's such far-flung areas. Nehru got carried away, and the first and perhaps the biggest mistake which led to the conflict took place that day at the end of his speech. Because while he was winding up, he suddenly announced in Parliament, without having consulted anybody, not even the army chief Thimaia, he announced that NIFA, as of this moment, is now being handed over to the Indian Army. Mind you, there was not even one soldier outside the Assam Rifles who was from the army, who was in NIFA. But this was a statement that was made in Parliament. And in my opinion, this triggered off the entire sequence of events which eventually led to the 1962 conflict, and there are various reasons for it. Nehru's attitude towards the army in the post-49 period was a little suspect. It was a time when the civil-military equation was also evolving in India. How much decision would be taken by the armed forces, how much the bureaucrats what kind of a role would they play, etc. All that was going on. That may be as it may, but Nehru also made one big blunder. He started to interfere with the functioning of the army because he had a favorite in a gentleman called B.G. Kaul. And he was at that time a lieutenant colonel who was the military attaché in Washington. He brought him back from there and he appointed him his political advisor in Jammu and Kashmir. In fact, B.G. Kaul, as a lieutenant colonel, oversaw the arrest of Sheikh Abdullah in Srinagar. After which, he was then sent off to Korea. There was problems there with the same officer, and the entire established chain of command, which was basically Thimaia, Thorat, S.D. Verma, and all these people. And these are the people who had fought through World War II. B.G. Kaul had not. He had never seen any action during the war. And they were established people. They had all commanded battalions, they had commanded brigades, they had commanded the divisions, etc. in 1947-48 in Jammu and Kashmir. And now you suddenly had one extra angle to the whole thing, which was Nehru had a favorite, which was B.G. Kaul. And though these officers kept saying, in the normal chain of command, they kept saying this officer is not fit for command and promotion, the Prime Minister would intervene at every level, from brigadier to major general to lieutenant general, etc. And this had created a very odd scenario. Now, in 1957, when Thimaia had come in as the chief, Thimaia was a very powerful and popular personality. To counterbalance him, Nehru appointed Krishna Menon as the defense minister. And in 1959, when the Longju incident happened and he declared that NIFA is now going to be part of this, he had not even taken Thimaia into confidence. And this led to that huge incident where Thimaia eventually resigned. Now, the government of India, which is basically the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister, engineered the whole thing to make it look like Thimaia had resigned in pique. He had not been consulted, and they made it look like he had resigned over the appointment of B.G. Kaul as a Lieutenant General into Army Headquarters as QMG, which they were dead against. But the resignation had nothing to do with that. The resignation had everything to do with the handing over of this of NIFA to the army without even consulting the army. Nehru talked Thimaia out of that. He said the Chinese are at our doorstep. You can't retire. You can't resign at this point of time, etc., etc. So Thimaia said okay, and he promised him that I will sort this issue out. But then, the moment Thimaia left the Murti, they then called up they let it be known to the media through PTI that Thimaia had resigned, and this created complete hangama. And next day or 4 or 5 days later in Parliament, Nehru reduced Thimaia to a lame duck as a chief because he made virtual fun of him in Parliament. That he's resigned over a issue which is not consequential and things like that. So Nehru had created favorites, and political interference in the command structure of the army is suicidal, because the moment you start doing that, you had it. And the repercussions of this were, when Thimaia retired in 1961, with him went Thorat, who was the Eastern Army commander, and S.D. Verma, who was the 15 Corps commander in Jammu and Kashmir. And some very competent people were moved out. General Thapar was elevated to the rank of chief. He was senior to Thorat, but he was not expected to take over. He was not as competent as he was. He had not seen that kind of combat or anything. And along with him, B.G. Kaul was made the CGS, the Chief of General Staff, which was the equivalent of the Vice Chief. And it was also very clearly known to everybody, rank and file, that he is going to be the next chief because the Prime Minister so desires. Now, when the problem began with China, they didn't know what to do, because they immediately took B.G. Kaul, who was the CGS, and now they created a new corps and sent him off over there to go and fight the Chinese. So you would actually think, if you look at the build-up to 62, that the Indian Army had only one officer, which was B.G. Kaul. The moment there was a problem, Nehru would say, send this guy. But they created havoc, because the army has established protocols. It has a reporting system. It has a whole chain of command. You start tampering with that, you've had it. And that is exactly what happened, because now let's come to what triggered off the actual action. Because on the Namkachu, there had been, when the forward posts were being established, one of the posts which had been established was the Dhola post. Right? Now, the Dhola post was actually supposed to be on the crest of the Thagla, but it had been created by Captain Mahabir Prasad in the valley below, because it was easier to supply it. Otherwise, to get there was another 3 or 4 days hard march. There was a post there. The Assam Rifles had 40 or 50 men there with the JCO when the Chinese came down the Thagla on the 8th of September 1962. This JCO panicked, and he reported that 600 Chinese have come. Actually, there were not more than 60 of them. And this, on the radio, when it was conveyed back to Lumpu, and Brigadier Dalvi, who was the commander of 7th Brigade, was going on leave. He was stopped. Various battalions which were de-inducting from the area, coming in, going out, they were stopped. They were told, turn around, go back, doesn't matter what your state of equipment, what your state of this thing is, go right back. And on top of all this, call was then made. They hurriedly established 4 corps. Call flew in, and they just decided to pump an entire brigade into the Namkachu Valley, which is like cannon fodder for the Chinese, because you do never deploy at the base of a hill. And they were sitting there. And then on 10th of October, Call tried to take the Thagla Ridge, and he tried to push troops up. And the Chinese, when they reacted, they opened fire. They came down and they met these troops, and they engaged them. The moment the Chinese started firing, the first thing Call said, oh my God, they're serious. They're firing at us. I'm going back to Delhi, I have to brief the Prime Minister. And he actually fled from the Namkachu. But to his credit, he came back to Delhi and he advised the Prime Minister that, look, we are very badly positioned over there. We have no business to be, tactically we are in a very unsound position. We must pull out. But you see, now there was another angle to the whole thing. Thorat had been replaced by Bogi Sen as the Eastern Army commander, and Timaya had been replaced by Thapar. And both these gentlemen had been under the shadow of an officer who was junior to them but who was calling the shots. Now, here was an opportunity for both of them to make him look small. So, it is Bogi Sen and Thapar who said, no, we will not withdraw. And what a blunder that turned out to be, because when the attack came on the 20th of October, 2 Rajputs were decimated. We lost 282 men in a matter of 1 hour. 19 Gorkhas, which were in their support slightly behind, they lost 2 or 3 companies. 9 Punjab and 4 Grenadiers were at slightly lower down on the Namkachu River. They were asked to pull out. Their COs fled, and in the process they tried to cut cross country instead of falling back on Hatongla and doing some sort of a resistant, systematic fallback and then engaging the Chinese. They tried to make a run for it, and in the process a whole lot of people were killed. This all happened in a matter of hours. 7th Brigade disintegrated, and this led to one event after the other. 2 days later, Bumla, one Sikh, performed exceptionally well against the Chinese when the attack came on the 23rd. But that one company, which was commanded by Haripal Kaushik, who was incidentally a centre forward of the Indian hockey team, He got a gold before the 1962 war and a gold in the Olympics after that. And he got a Veer Chakra for this performance. But while these boys were fighting it out at Bumla and stopping the Chinese from coming in, Boghi Sen had arrived in the meantime at Tawang. The GOC Niranjan Prasad had fallen back from Zimitang, and they abandoned Tawang just like that. It was a decision taken at, we can't hold it. Let's go. We'll go and we'll hold a defensive line further back. And they decided on Sela. Sela also was a disaster. So, one thing after the other, the whole thing collapsed. And it all happened because all the officers who had been appointed at that point of time, right down to the brigade commander level, were political appointments.